like today, if you're dating somebody and like you make a call back home, they'll make more phone calls and find out where they're from. And if something doesn't check out, that wedding's canceled. That's what overseas is about. It's about one of those weddings that should have been canceled. But in my movie, it's a happy ending. The wedding doesn't get canceled. I know, in reality, it would have been canceled. And yeah, so it's a happy ending. They end up together in overseas.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ikwasia, and I'm a filmmaker based in Brooklyn, I guess. I say sometimes Lagos and Brooklyn because for a while I was maybe a little bit more back and forth. I grew up here. My parents, again, took us back home often. And my first degree was in biology. I was supposed to be pre-med. I wasn't passionate about it, so I became more and more towards the creative side and went to film school, NYU, grad film. And I'm really a writer, director, dancer. That's really what I am. So this film, Isa's Story, was my second-year project at NYU. And the scope of the project was just a 12-minute short film. The current version is a 15, which I'm now turning into a feature. But what happened was I was on leave from film school. Creatively, I wasn't sure where I was going, and I had gone broke, so I left school. I needed to work and figure out what was next for me. And I'd been working on a memoir about my mom that I lost to cancer. And I was in Lagos, and I heard the story of DSK. And I was just very moved by the story and the fact that he had so much money to tell his side or whatever version of the truth he had, and I felt the woman's side wasn't getting told. And if you're not familiar with the case, it's about an African immigrant housekeeper who was allegedly sexually assaulted by DSK, who was then head of the IMF at a Manhattan hotel. And he was arrested. He was in the running for the French presidency. He basically fell from grace. And due to some credibility issues on the woman's side, the Manhattan DA decided not to pursue the criminal case, but she did eventually settle with him in a civil case. And I've heard recently has actually opened up a restaurant. And so this was just my offering of a side of a story, really about a personal struggle within a woman and her family and picking up the pieces of her life. And the film has done very well. I could not have expected, you know, I was in the 2013 Student Academy Awards semifinals. I've shown the film in Lagos. I just came back from France. I'm going to FESPACO. It's showing in Portland. It's just doing really well, which was amazing because when I came back from leave to do this film, nobody knew me. You know, you do make your crews based on your personal relationships, and no one knew me in school because I had been gone for a couple of years, and literally none of my classmates worked on the film. So I had to find a crew, source a crew in the local New York area, and this is Belinda Harden, who I want to shout out. She's my production manager, / location manager, / wearing many hats, and had my back a lot on set. And so it was really a labor of love, and I couldn't be more beside myself at the response to the film and the project and the story. And also for me as a Nigerian to tell a story about, you know, a Francophone African woman has been interesting too, because in certain ways I feel that Anglophone and Francophone African cinema don't speak to each other that often. So it's been really interesting for me. And I didn't think of it as a strategic move. You know, I got programmed in FESPACO. Many of my friends, other Anglophone Africans, didn't. And I know much of that is due to the fact that it's a Francophone woman's story. So that's a little bit about me. And I am working on the feature film, so if you want to talk more about that, I have little postcards with more information. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shija Woyinka. I'm a musician and a filmmaker. Excuse me. Yes, I'm a musician and a filmmaker. Eldest Corner is a first for me. It's a first feature. Funny thing is, the very gentleman who first got me behind the camera also happened to be the same catalyst who got me to go back home to Nigeria to go seek out some of the elders. I was born in London to Nigerian parents, and at a little age, when I was 5, I was shipped back to Lagos to go get immersed in the culture. As was customary at the time, my father had just graduated, finished his studies. Nigeria was in the midst of a boom. And, you know, able hands were needed on deck. So most of the immigrants who studied abroad back then all rushed back home. My father being part of that generation who went back home. I was taken back home with him, and the 12 years I spent there, I got immersed in the culture, got a great sense of self, identity, and everything. In the 80s, the country began to fall apart, following a succession of military coups, and then I was shipped back to England to further my education. And while studying in London, I caught the bug for music. My father had no idea what was going on. As far as he was concerned, I was studying to become a mechanical engineer, and that was that. The thought of me being a musician was unheard of. So I did the degree, and I thought, you know what, if I were going to get away with being a musician, I might as well do the master's, or better still, the doctorate. So when I hold up that certificate to him like that, that's your engineering degree, I'm a musician now. He wouldn't have been able to tell me anything. So I went on to finish my master's, whatever, and I immersed myself more and more into music. And part of my musical journey brought me out here to New York. And I've been here since 2000. And a few years back, my dear friend Osita, who's actually in the crowd somewhere, so just said, dude, you write all these great, amazing songs. It's about time you captured some imagery to some of your music. Shoot a video, he says. It doesn't cost anything to shoot a video. Just shoot anything. Shoot friends, just shoot something. Get started. And I got behind the camera, and I caught the bug for the moving image ever since then. And a few years back, Osita is actually an audiophile, like I did explain. He travels all over the place, all over the world, seeking all these amazing, unheard of, incredible music, which I've always told the world needs to see and hear more of what you have. And whenever he comes back, I'd go to his apartment, and we'll go through some of his new or his latest finds or the new records. And you know, I remember one very distinct evening, I went to his apartment, and he was playing me all these records. Amazing, amazing, amazing music. I'm like, wow, what is this? Who are these people? Where are these? What's going on? And you know, he says, oh well, these are some of the old records I found. These are some of the legendary, iconic musicians of yesteryears. He played some high life, Afrobeat, incredible, incredible music. And I just got nostalgic, you know? I began to think, wow, we have all this, we have a treasure trove of great musical talent, which the world hasn't heard or seen, you know? Everyone seems to think, when you tell people about music in Nigeria, everyone says, fella. And obviously there's so much more. We have so much more that's not being heard of, not being seen, you know? So when I did eventually go back home, I mean, I was drawn home by a number of things, you know, my loneliness, my isolation in New York, you know, my own quest for an identity, you know. Everybody was going back home, it seemed, you know, everybody was returning back to Nigeria. My peer group were going back home and building bridges, and, you know, like my father's generation, they were going back home with their skills and trying to lift the country up, you know. So it was like, Rosita kept going back home and says, dude, at some point, you're gonna have to go back home, you know. All my friends back home told me the same thing. Things are changing, the musical landscape back home is changing. You're a musician, you're an artist, you have skills, come back home, go see. So I finally took the plunge and I went back home. And in the midst of that, I decided to, you know what, begin to seek out some of these iconic musicians whose records I'd heard at Osita's. And as it were, quite a few of them had died. I did my research and I dig deeper and deeper. And one by one, I began to seek out, began to find all these incredible, incredible, legendary musicians. And they told me so many stories, their life histories, their musical careers. And what it seemed to happen was like their their music and their lives seem to have followed a parallel trajectory with that of the nation itself. Through the country's ups and its downs, its upheavals, their lives went through the same currents, you know? And I just got soaked in. I went to the eastern part of the country. I learned a great deal about the Civil War, which my father's generation never said anything about. It was too painful for them to visit. But we went to the east, spoke to some of the musicians out there, and I got to rediscover Nigeria anew, and in the process rediscover myself anew as well. So Elders Con is about that whole journey, and I think it's a great way of looking at the nation's history through its musical icons. So the film will take you through key moments in the nation's history: the independence, the struggle for independence from British colonial rule, the Biafran War, the glory years when we had all that oil and we were throwing it around, the military coups, as well as my personal narrative, which is woven through these as well. So we have finally finished. I finished shooting the film about 2 years ago, and we had a series of stop-starts trying to raise money, trying to get it finished. Thankfully, we just got a grant from the Nigerian government to finish the film. So I'm about to start editing the whole thing. So I throw a few excerpts up here for people to see and to continue to build an audience around it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
And I don't like Bollywood or Pollywood
Yes. Hollywood.
I think we should just name it after wherever the actors go in Lagos or in Enugu. But there's a lot of amazing untrained talent. I shot in Nigeria and I shot here, and you know, like I went to school, like I studied film, I studied acting, and ex-pre-med as well. They only want us to be doctors, lawyers, or engineers. And so we're all ex one of those three. I'm ex-doctor. So anyway, that's only allowed three, only three. So they're not, like, they didn't go to school, they didn't get an MFA in acting or whatever, so I just, you know, like, there was, I wasn't aware of it, but there might have been some arrogance when I arrived. But the kind of talent I saw, I was blown away, and I think when the technical, whatever they call production value, just that stuff, the stories themselves also, but the talent, the people that I met, and the energy in them, I haven't seen anything like that here, and I'm glad that we're progressing technically, and when we like kind of get technically to the, I don't know, whatever the standard is, then we're really gonna blow people away.
I tend to think of Nollywood more as a genre than I do Nigerian cinema. Nollywood for me is defined by, you know, films they're selling in the market, they're flooding the market, they're telling local stories, but those can be films in Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, can be films in Ibibio. But for me, it's a certain genre and way of telling the story that I would call a Nollywood film. So every film coming out of Nigeria, I wouldn't call a Nollywood film, and every film by a Nigerian filmmaker, I wouldn't call a Nollywood film. If any of you are familiar with Andrew Dosunmu's work, he did Restless City and Mother of George. You can ask him and he'll tell it to you for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours about why he's not a Nollywood filmmaker. And that's not to cast aspersion to those stories, because I think there's a lot of energy and interest and excitement around them because they are local stories. They appeal to a lot of different people who come from these kinds of cultures, Caribbeans, Haitians. There's a lot of people watching quote-unquote Nollywood films. They can buy them in the Bronx.
And I
they
think
can
that's
buy
a
them.
good point, because I think sometimes we are introduced by Nollywood and Bollywood as Americans, especially when, I know years ago on Netflix it was like labeled that way. So it's great to know, you know, to learn that from you, what, you know, the terms, because the same thing with Bollywood. I've heard several Indian filmmakers say, I don't like Bollywood, it's just part of Indian cinema.
Right.
So I think that's a great education for us.
And so as I was saying, there's many people find Nollywood films appealing. They find that the stories really resonate with them, but then there's Nigerians that hate, not quote-unquote Nollywood genre films, who don't find that they resonate with them at all. But I like, there's some Nollywood films I like and some I don't, because for me, given that I grew up here, I'm trained to watch films in a certain way. So there's certain tropes in Nollywood films, as in you may watch really long takes of someone driving up a driveway, driving through the gate, parking, getting out of the car. Where I'm just trained as now a filmmaker, growing up and trained in a Western institution to cut and edit some of those tropes out, and some of the sort of high drama acting, which comes out of a more sort of like traveling theater tradition. Like we had this Yoruba traveling theater, and a lot of those techniques were just kind of translated to film. And so there are ways in which I'm growing up and trained in this culture that looking at a Nollywood film, it may not appeal to some of the sort of aesthetic sensibilities I may have, but I think there's people working in the Nollywood genre and style that are actually more and more now trying to appropriate some of the more kind of Western techniques. There's many directors that are actually flying in DPs that sort of using high-end cameras. I mean, really trying to raise the kind of production value of Nollywood films. And I think there's a lot of, when I go to the festivals, I showed in Lagos and Calabar at the end of last year, and there's a lot of energy around how can we raise the production value and really compete on an international scale. And so there's a lot of thought and ideas around how to do that and appropriate more of these kind of Western tropes in telling local stories. So,
I would say I wasn't first and foremost. I wasn't actually a big fan of the genre. You know, I approached Nollywood from the technical perspective, like, wow, this is so badly shot. The sound is all over the place and all of that. I looked at it from that point, I must admit. But I have come to really appreciate the spirit within which these films are made. I mean, these are people who've just like grabbed the bulls by the horn, as it were. Whatever resources we have at our disposal, we're going to tell our stories and we're going to do it our way. And I think that spirit, the spirit of that can-do type spirit, that guerrilla filmmaking spirit, I think is what folks around the world have kind of seen, have caught on to, and have come to appreciate it. And you know, I also think there's a big thing for we telling our stories from our own perspective. You know, I think there's a beautiful thing in all of that. So I mean, running around Nigeria with trying to get my own documentary off the ground. My co-producer like, look, you know, dude, grab the bull by the horns. Let's just go. Let's just get it done, you know? We don't have a budget, whatever you have at your disposal, let's just go, let's just do it. So that whole spirit of, let's make the film with whatever resources we have at our disposal, I'm a big fan of. And I think, like she said earlier on, a lot of the producers back home are actually trying to raise production values, you know, become more and more skilled. And I think it's only a matter of time before things actually get on par with whatever's being done out here in the West. And the fact that we're doing it from our unique perspective, I think will also bring a whole lot more to the genre as well.
Thank you. I think what's also very common with all three of your films is that it's very strong in storytelling. But in doing your stories to films, do you focus on your audience or global audience, or if it's really about focusing just on telling the story? Or at what point did you start thinking about audience?
My producing teachers would say, before you tell the story, you ask yourself, is it a story worth telling, and who's the audience? I think I'm a bit different because I think I'm more internal, I think, in my process, and I don't feel like I have to make films. I mean, I chose this. It's an expression of me. It's an expression of my own creativity and insight. So I don't do anything thinking about the audience now. Any producers in the room will say this is a recipe for disaster. But I really feel if I focus on telling, you know, a personal-driven narrative that really appeals to universal themes, that it's a story anyone would want to watch. Maybe that's an egotistical perspective, but that's how I feel.
I agree with you. The stories usually come from my perspective and my experiences, but a lot of people that I met in Nigeria, producers and directors, talked to me about return on investment and stuff like that, and money. And so I'm like balancing both. And so that story originally was for like Igbo people, like the group I'm in. But I don't think it's, by the end of it, it's like that anymore. It's more about, you know, just love. So I'm like balancing this.
Okay. Well, the follow-up question on that and asking about audience was, so with, you know, digital platforms, there's so many different options on distribution. So for your two films, I think you're still in pre-production, but what are your thoughts on, you know, the best distribution for your films or your new projects that you're looking to do in the next year or two?
I can speak on that a little bit. I used to do marketing for RealAfrican.com, which is an online African film and TV platform, which our competitor, but you couldn't really call it that because Iroko's so big as Iroko, which is an online African film and TV distributor, which has subscriber base, which is, it's the largest share, I think, of the online African film and TV market. And it's created a space for, not only for audiences around the world to be able to watch Nollywood films or Nigerian cinema, but for Nigerian filmmakers to be able to market their films. It is a space that exists. There's others like it. Again, there's Real African, there's Booney TV. There's actually Netflix. I mean, if you're able to reach that market, there's Netflix. But my short film I haven't received distribution for yet. I'm still kind of working the festival circuit. I'm hoping that I would, but I think I really made the short film as a stepping stone to making the feature, so I wasn't really thinking about how to distribute the short film. And then these days also there's a lot of kind of do-it-yourself where you can actually self-distribute on your own website or other platform, and since I've always worked in marketing, I think I probably more thought of distributing it myself, and I do have DVDs available, and they're available on the website.
International film festivals too.
Say it again?
I said you've been in several international film festivals.
Yes, which also gets the word out and gets people interested in the work. And but I think it's more difficult in the short film than the feature film genre to get distribution. There's just less avenues for short films. But as I was just talking earlier with Veronique, there's more and more avenues for feature film distribution on the continent. So.
Linda, for your film?
I have a lot in common with you about, again, the distribution. I was approached with a couple of distribution, what do you call it, contracts or something like that. I didn't like them very much. I thought they were very exploitative or something. Like beginning filmmakers who, I guess, might be in a position of, they were taking advantage of new filmmakers. And I was a new filmmaker, so I said no. So I'm doing a lot of this like from the website and video on demand, Amazon and Iroko, and I think thank God for the internet, because before the internet we were just like prey for the distributors. Like.
I'm nowhere near distribution just yet. This is a first for me. I'm hoping to. We did a Kickstarter a few years back. We did a Kickstarter campaign for the film, and I think part of what this is for me as well is a way to build an audience for the film, to help get the word out. Traditionally, I'll probably most likely take the film onto the festival circuit, but I'll also be exploring non-traditional methods of distributing the film. You know, through word of mouth, through specialized streaming services, like you said, Amazon, Netflix, and what have you. I'm also, primarily I'm a musician. For me, I think I want to use my music as a platform to drive the film. You know, if ever I have a gig, I'll probably most likely sell tickets for the film. Like, you know what, I'm going to screen this film, and then you're going to watch me perform.
Hey.
You know, I'm going to think out the box and see how I can, you know, in that spirit of Nollywood, guerrilla filmmaking, guerrilla distribution, whatever. I'm trying to think out the box and see what works.
Okay. So I wonder, like, who would you like to partner with? What would be your dream director, producer, writer that you would love to partner with for, you know, for a future project?
Martin Scorsese.
George is going to say something. Okay.
Oh, gosh. As far as directing or writing? Or
Well, yeah, you could be like if you're a writer and you're looking for a director, or if you're looking for a producer. Like, do you have anybody in mind? You're like, this is who I would really like to work with, like for a future project, or even like, if there's someone that you want to cast in your film, is there a specific actor or actress you want to,
For now, I must say I'm very intrigued, or I'm very fascinated by documentary filmmaking. I've had a chance to take a look at quite a few documentaries over the last few years. I like the idea of verite documentary, letting stories tell themselves, and I love Wim Wenders. I'm a bit overreaching. Yeah.
No, it's Dream. You got it.
There's a film he's just done with Sebastião Salgado, the Brazilian photographer, which is not, I don't think it's out just yet. I am open, I am open. And the other thing is, I would like to see a lot more films from the continent. I want to explore a whole lot more of the filmmakers from the continent. I think there's a lot of our stories have yet to be told from our unique perspective.
That's what we're talking about.
I'm forever seeking out, who are the directors, who are the writers, who are the producers of African filmmaking. Even in the whole Nollywood, I always say we have a very rich oral tradition back home. And I'm always telling my friends, like, wow, I wish I could find out some of the writers back home, so who could tell me a really rich story I can put to picture. So I know there's a lot of unseen or unheard talent from the continent, which I'm very curious to tap into, to figure out.
Okay. Ladies, any dream talent? Good. No. Thinking about this one.
I think, well, I write and direct, but I've always wanted to work with Andrew. Keep mentioning him. I just think he's a beautiful director. I'd love to write something he directs, or vice versa. Kunle Falayon, The Figurine, October 1. Perhaps as an actor, he's an amazing actor in addition to producer, director, everything. But I would love to work with him actually as a producer. What else can I think of? I've been on set with Tunde Kalani. He's another famous Nigerian director that I would love to work with. He's a real professional, old school. He tells very indigenous stories, but he tries to kind of cross them over into the contemporary landscape as well.
Okay, I'm not as well researched in the more current filmmakers. I have some friends. I have a friend named Alex Mouth, and he's directing a soap opera in Nigeria, like some big budget soap opera. And a couple months ago, I wrote the screenplay for a film that he shot with a very famous actress, and she produced it. So I liked working with him. I think if I just had to throw out a name, I'd say Ang Lee, because I like how the kind of performances he gets out of the actors. And I'm actually an actor. I never had any intention of picking up a camera or writing a budget or any of this stuff, but I was in a position where it was like after I graduated, it's time to go to auditions, get your headshots, go to the gym, go to auditions. And I started going to auditions and I was like, I don't like this. I don't want to play a crack whore. I don't want to play a single mom. I don't want to play an angry black woman who doesn't need anybody's help. I don't want to play that. And I kept seeing it over and over. And Linda, stop complaining. Don't mention race. Okay, race doesn't exist. I'll just go to my auditions. And after a couple years, I was like, I got tired. There's like boxes that Hollywood makes for us, and I didn't fit in any of them. And I was like, all right, and I like writing though. I was like, all right, I'm gonna write some stories. All right, I'm gonna produce some stories. And that's how I ended up here. But I'm actually an actor who couldn't, an arrogant actor who couldn't find work worthy of auditioning for. And that's how he appeared.
Well, that goes to my next question. What are some of the benefits, personally or socially, of using, your skills as a writer or filmmaker to positively affect your community?
Well, for me, you get to address issues that may be unaddressed or unspoken or forgotten in the media. Particularly with my film, I was talking about a story that isn't being mentioned much in the media anymore, and about a woman who receded from view after her life was basically publicly exploded and exploited, and kind of left to her own devices. And I have an opportunity to raise that issue again, get people talking again. I was really anxious about going to France to show the film. I found the reception was very positive generally. I think the whole DSK issue with the perp walk and the French saying that's not how we do things here and how dare you, it's turned on its head because he's now in court facing, other charges in France, and French are, and I think it's a spirit that's been growing for some time but was exposed with the case, wanting to hold their leaders to task a bit more. So to be able to have a platform to talk about issues such as violence against women or the daily kind of harassments faced by hotel workers, most of whom are single immigrant mothers, is an opportunity for me. Because I've always been really interested in social justice issues, and I've always pulled from life in my work, I would say. That's really why I wanted, the real story about why I became a filmmaker is when I decided I wasn't going to be a doctor, and then my first job was in global health communications, and I started to become more and more creative, and I decided I wanted to just dance. I had a really awful audition for Urban Bushwoman, and I came home and I was like, I'm never going to be a professional dancer. And I'd had this application for film school sitting on my desk rotting away for months, and I just basically came home. I didn't dance for a month and a half. I finished the application and they accepted me, Yeah. So, and I had thought about, how else can I use my life and all my talents if I can't dance? If I can't do what would just make me happy all day. Yeah, and so this was an opportunity to express my love of movement, choreographing bodies in space, writing, sound. I was a musician when I was younger. So this actually brought a lot of those talents and abilities together. And also something I asked myself was, does anyone really want to, no offense, Gigi, I was like, does anyone really want to hear a musician talk after the set? But they always want to hear filmmakers talk. So this is perfect. I love to talk. I love people. I love connecting people with ideas. This is amazing. I'll do this. And it's actually worked out that way. I think, oddly enough, though, I see with musicians that what the difficulty with being a filmmaker is that most of our work we do in private, and people don't really see how much you suffer for your work. With a musician, they see you up on stage doing what you do. They can be equally experiencing you express it and validate you for it. With filmmakers, it's not like that at all, and you may kind of labor in obscurity for years without people ever recognizing you. So that's been a difficult aspect of it, really. But I'm really glad that it allows me to talk and to meet people, to travel the world. I would never, this is the thought I had in my head when I was like, okay, I can dance. But it's actually happened that way, and I'm frankly amazed. And I just want to be able to keep having opportunities to connect with people.
I'd say one of the greatest benefits I've found from having to get into filmmaking is give me besides it being another platform through which I'm able to express myself, I find it's a great way to inform and to share part of my own personal history and my ancestral history with others. I always say we have, as Nigeria has such a bad rep, I always say this, we have, when I'm Nigerian, when you show your green passport, all red flags go up and everything. For me, the film, for instance, for me is a great way through which I can show off more of what we have, culturally, socially, historically. I think it's a great platform upon which to showcase the true diversity and the richness of the culture and of the people. And in doing the research for the film and speaking to the elders, I have learned so much more about the country itself, much more than I ever would ordinarily if I was just...
How many hours of film do you have?
Well, I've lost count.
You lost count? Your television, it's been 3 years of process.
Years and years of footage. But like I said, it's been a great way through which to engage people, you know, to share part of the history, the culture, you know, and the music as well. You know, because people always say fella, but there's so much more beyond fella. Fella's just a drop in the ocean, you know. Well,
Can I add something as well? I think a lot of my experience in film too is mediated by my experiences as a writer, because as I said, I was working on this memoir for several years. I was really active in the Nigerian writing community. There's all these initiatives to like bring back the book, get Nigerians reading again. But Nigerians watch movies and they watch TV, so film and TV has become this kind of great cultural export for Nigeria as well as music. But I always kind of balance the two against each other, and I found that film allowed me to really connect in a really direct way with people who may otherwise not read what I have to say. It allows me to kind of suffuse these messages into the image, and people kind of sit quietly with it and take what they take away from it. But I think my work as a filmmaker is as much informed by my work as a writer, and I think in Nigeria there's a more uphill battle with literacy, facing issues of poverty, but even people who can't read can watch a film and laugh at it. So I think they're kind of, they're not parallel quite, but they're kind of two streams and ways of reaching people, and I try to make the most of both of them.
And Linda?
Yeah, I totally agree with this about the reading. I feel like in pretty much on the whole planet, like in general, people, I feel like we're reading less and less, and everything's more visual, video, and our attention spans, I feel like, are getting shorter. So Nigerians definitely, but I feel like everybody in the world in general, if I have anything important to say, I think if I put it in a film, it's more likely to be heard than if I wrote it in a book. And I am a writer too, but I totally agree with what you're saying about this reading thing. And it's even people who can read very well, they'd rather watch a movie. So, and then the stories, are telling our stories. Without unconsciously, I do care a lot about history and culture, and I'm not aware of it, but it shows up. It shows up in everything that I write, some cultural aspect or some historical aspect. So I guess it's unconscious, but I do write about Nigerians often and about Nigerian culture often, and I don't think it would be written otherwise. I feel like film is it's a lot more powerful than it seems to be. It seems like just another movie. You know, like you come home from work, you just want to watch a movie, but it's like something that, it's like a dream that we manipulate into this thing. I mean, documentary even, you can't have a pure even documentary is a manipulation of reality. So it's like this manipulated dream, and there's a whole bunch of them out there, and we all watch them when we get home from work and we're tired. We don't want to learn. We don't feel like watching a documentary that day. And these manipulated dreams are so powerful, and the power of them, the power of marketing that I'm learning about, it actually kind of scares me. So it's so powerful. I'm just like, okay, if anything important needs to be said, it needs to be wedged into a popular film. That's what I think these days. So all of my ideas about Nigeria, about women, about Africa, I'm just gonna just stuff them into popular movies.
Well, that's perfect. My next question, I was gonna ask what is your favorite film genre, but I'm gonna say your favorite film genre and book, because we talked about reading. So do you have one? I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be the type of films that you write, produce, or direct, but do you have a favorite film genre? Well, I'll say mine's romantic comedy. So,
Drama?
Absolutely. Drama? Okay.
said?
Drama.
Drama for me as well. I would say as far as books go, I like an author called Paul Marshall. She's Caribbean American. I also like the work of Teju Cole, Every Day is for the Thief, Open City, who's a friend of mine. I must mention Chimamanda because she's kind of high on the international radar, and many of her books now have been, well, not many, but Half of a Yellow Sun was adapted into a film directed by B. Bandele, and Americana is going to be adapted into a film as well. I like a lot of contemporary Nigerian writers right now, not just because they're my friends, but because I think there's a real power in the pen. I don't want to say that film is, because really, if any of you know the late, great Usman Sembène, he always said he would rather write a book than make a film. And in many ways I feel the same. I mean, I feel like books have changed my life far more than any film I've watched has. And I probably will always feel that way. And I feel like Nigerian authors working now are really, there's this quiet struggle going on to bring back the book. It really is that. And there's a lot of festivals sprouting up. There's Ake, Book and Arts Festival, which is film, music, literature, run by Lola Sharnain, who's the author of Babasegi's Wives, The Secret Lives of Babasegi's Wives. So there's a lot of cross-fertilization going on right now, which is really exciting. And as we learn in film school, many great films started with books. And as I mentioned, Paul Marshall, there's a short story of hers that I would love, a very dream to adapt that into a film. It's called To Dada in Memoriam. It's a historical, autobiographical short story about her going to visit her grandmother in Barbados in the 1930s. And at the time, there were a lot of, there was unrest between the Brits and the sugarcane farmers, because they were a British colony. And in a show of strength, the Brits flew their spy bomber planes over the fields and razed all the sugarcane fields. In the process, her grandmother died. And it's just one of those stories I would just love to tell. So I'm equally inspired, I guess, by literature and film. I think as far as film goes, drama, I would say. Thrillers. I actually like action. I love, the Bourne trilogies and all that. I don't know that I would ever make an action film. I think action is a difficult genre for Nollywood and Nigeria in particular because of the special effects. But there's this film going around now called A Mile from Home from one of my director friends, Erica Kimian, which is, he taught himself how to do all of those special effects, and it's really like to watch it and be that gripped by a Nigerian action film is really an amazing experience. So if you get a chance, A Mile from Home, check it out.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. There's a martial artist that I'm working with now on a script, and we're gonna make a martial arts Nigerian movie. And so when you said action, I was like, yes. And yeah, my favorite is thrillers. I claim to hate romance, but it keeps coming up in my writing. So my film is actually a romantic thriller. There's love in it, but I still try to scare you whenever possible. I didn't do it on purpose. It just comes out like that. So, but I love thrillers the most. And yeah.
I like that romance thriller. I think most of us have it in our life. So,
Spike Lee.
Ava.
Yes.
Like I said before, Ang Lee, I watch a lot of movies. Like in the recent years, I just become a Netflix type person, like vegetable a little bit. So I'm not sure who made the movies that I love the most, but if I go find out who made those movies that I love the most, those are the people I want to work with.
Forrest Whitaker, I'd love to work with.
we have a question.
Yeah, I was just thinking, among black actors, there have been many Nigerians who've made a mark and who are out there even right now, who are Oscar worthy and who would die to have a story that is Nigerian or African or Black perspective to tell our stories, and they'd love to be in it because that's what they're lacking over there, just like you when you were auditioning. I haven't heard you guys mention any of them. Are they in your radar when you're writing, when you're thinking about them? Because I know that some of them may be looking for stories to be part of, maybe to produce, now that they've opened the door in Hollywood to bridge the gap of Hollywood and Nollywood. Selma, the star of Selma is Nigerian. There's also the star of 12 Years a Slave is Nigerian, and there are so many others, both male and female.
Yeah, there's right now there's a film, I'm not sure if it's in production or pre-production, but it's the most expensive Nigerian movie ever. It's called October 1st. That's like our 4th of July.
That's Kunle Falayan.
Yes. Oh, really? I didn't know that. You see the names. This is important. But they have the guy from Selma is in there. The guy from 12 Years a Slave is in there, and so like we're slowly going in that direction. But again, the proportions, the number of brown-skinned actors proportionally to the number of brown-skinned movies that are being made, it needs to still be like fixed, kind of. You know what I mean? Like there are these great movies that are coming out, but there can't just be one great movie in a year, and out of that 365 days, we're supposed to say, yes, we got a brown movie, like we need more.
That's why I'm saying, to what extent you as writers, as filmmakers, are thinking of them being part of your, taking it to the other level.
Always.
They have money, they could be producers, they could be actors in it. How are you bridging the gap or thinking about it, or do you think it's impossible?
Always. I have friends in Nigeria, my actor friends, my director friends, and they're always on my mind. When I write, actually, I'm thinking about them while I'm writing. So yes, always.
I would say, I mean, I mentioned a couple directors, producers. I didn't mention David Oyelowo, who's the star of Selma, who didn't get an Oscar. I didn't mention Chiwetel Ejiofor, who's in Half of Yellow Sun, Carmen Ejogo, who's also in Selma. I got a chance to meet, actually, David and Carmen and Ava and Carmen at the Academy screening that they had of Selma. And I would love to work with any or all of them. I don't necessarily write a film with actors in mind, except the lead of the feature version of this, which is the same woman from the short. I think now, as I'm putting together the feature proposal, I'm imagining who those people would be. Chiwetel would be on the list for one of the characters, you know, as well as David Oyelowo. It's challenging when actors get to that stage. Lupita's on that list as well, because they become up here. I'd known Lupita for years before she got, you know, an Oscar. I've seen her actually do better performances than when she got that Oscar on stage. But then people become kind of up here, so it's a bit challenging. I mean, you can still, it's still possible. But I think what I'm interested in also as a director is creating opportunities for people that don't have a name, which again becomes more challenging from a marketing standpoint. I think it's always a balance. But I'm really interested in friends of mine working here in the city, Zainab Jah, I don't know if you know Adipero Oduye, who was in Pariah. Many friends of mine working around who aren't getting as many opportunities. I'm interested in giving opportunities. It's not necessarily getting the biggest name. I mean, for all of its, I don't know how to phrase this. I was going to say for all of its strengths, Half of a Yellow Sun had big name actors, but I think in some of the story points fell a little bit short. So for me, I wouldn't have maybe chosen some of those bigger names. I might have chosen lesser known names that were able to sort of more convincingly or authentically portray this Nigerian experience of a very specific time. So I think it's always a balance. You try to do your best. You don't always get who you want. You can always reach for them, but I'm open to any and all collaborations. I'm not established yet. I don't have a name yet.